We are excited that you are here today. This is something new that we started. This is our first ever leadership Q&A panel. Something we want to do every single year. We're so happy and we're excited that you are here. Usually we go to conferences we take in so much, but we want to have some practical things and really live it out. After we leave conference, after we go back to our workplaces, we want to live out what we're actually learning. So what better than to learn more about leadership? We have three amazing panelists here with me. Just a little FYI, if you can look at the screen, there's a number. So this is a Q&A panel. So for the first 20-25 minutes or so, I'll be asking the panelists some questions. After that, you can text in questions to that number, any questions that you have, and we'll be answering those questions anonymously. So during the session, if you have a question in mind, please text that question to that number. It's 516-430-7695. So if you have any questions during the session, please text those questions to that number. We have three panelists today. So to start off, can we just go around and just talk a little about ourselves, what we do, our names and what we do. If you can. Yeah.
Starting with, my name is Ben. I'm the pastor of QCOG. I'm glad to be here. I do pastor seminar a lot of places, many countries, talk to leaders, and it's a beautiful opportunity to speak to our own.
That's good.
Hey everyone, my name is Linson, and I serve, I explained a lot of it last night, but I serve as the regional director for InterVarsity in Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Louisiana, and I also serve as one of the teaching pastors at Metro Church of God. And leadership is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I think South Asians, and Indians, and minorities in general are called to leadership. All throughout Scripture, God uses people on the margin, people who are not the people that are in the center. God uses those that are minorities in power and leadership. And I want to call all of us to that place of leadership and influence. And so I'm excited to talk about that.
It's awesome.
So I have a little bit of a different experience. I was a student leader with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, so that's where a lot of, I think, actually I was looking over some of the questions, I feel like we have like a very similar background. But yeah, that's the majority of my experience, but I also lead in small ways within this church too.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of our panelists. As you can see, a lot of experience around the leadership realm. And I think the first appropriate question that I should ask is, how would you define leadership? In your own words, how would you define leadership? And individually, yeah. Anyone can take a stab.
I can start. Okay, so I feel like you're going to have a similar answer because this is what InterVarsity taught me. But leadership for me was always defined as, okay, I was actually thinking of vision for a second. Okay, but whenever I think of a leader, I think of somebody who is multiplying, somebody who is guiding other people. So when you, for instance, within our church, if you are the choir leader, then I think of somebody who is not only leading and motivating and inspiring other people within the choir itself, but someone who's seeking out other leaders as well. So you are constantly looking and thinking, who will be the next choir leader? Who will be the next person who's in charge? So I think a leader always has a vision, and they're always thinking of the future, and they're always motivated not just for how can we lead things right now in this present moment, but 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what is our vision of the future and how are we going to get there?
That's great.
Yeah, if I could, define leadership in its most basic form, it's simply one word: it's influence. Leaders influence people, they influence structures, and they influence vision. So the key aspect of a leader is they change the situation that they're in through their influence. And so leaders can be good and bad, because influence can be either good or bad. And so no matter, you don't need position to be a leader, you don't need title to be a leader. All all you need is influence, and anybody can be influential. And so, so you can be the youngest person in your church and exert leadership because you have influence over certain things. And you can be the oldest person in the church and still have influence. And so, and it's kind of base definition in my mind is teaching people to exert influence in godly ways.
Every individual has a vision. Every individual has a gift. A leader is the one who brings them together to achieve a common goal.
It's perfect. Yeah, so what you guys said was totally perfect. So I want to kind of dive in more about team structure and like leadership in a team setting. So I guess for me, I'll start off like the biggest struggle that I face when I'm in leadership is I think that people will come to me and they'll be part of a team. But you know, the Bible clearly states, you know, when we read the book of Jonah, the word of the Lord came to Jonah. Jonah didn't go to God, God came to Jonah. So my next question is, like, what are some traits that you see when you pick people to be part of your team? You know, what are some traits that leaders should generally have, you know, in a team setting? You know, what are things that stand out in a leader?
Like echoing what we were saying earlier, so one thing I remember that we always looked for leaders, especially when I was a part of InterVarsity, was we always looked for influence. So within our college chapter, within our churches, who's somebody who has a lot of influence over other people, because that is a major component of leadership. And I feel like a lot of the questions, they kind of meld together as well, because another thing that I really look for is someone's character. And what's funny is I was talking with my baby cousin, Abby, about this yesterday. And basically, we were talking about how whenever we do something, whenever, for instance, even as a teacher, you ask someone to do something, there has to be an element of character. So an example I have is, okay, so I teach English, and I have a license in special education. And one thing we always require of our students is that whenever they hand something in, they cannot have typos. Because when they take the English Regents, there's an entire section of the rubric, which is basically your grammar, essentially. And our students called us out one day because we had a slideshow and there was a bunch of typos because we were making it like probably really late at night. And we asked the kids, like, guys, we need some grace right now, okay? Like, is there no forgiveness? And one of our students raised her hand, she goes, you have no forgiveness for us when we have typos in our assignments, so we don't have forgiveness for you. But it kind of goes the same way, because when, in particular, like for me, when I'm looking for someone to join my team, if that person has character, if they say they're going to do something and they do it, like that's someone who I know I can trust in, and that's a trait that I personally really look for.
I usually look for the people who never give up. Failure or success, are you willing to not give up? Then okay.
Yeah, I mean, one way to, like one simple acronym I have people use is they use the word FAT. They want to look for fat people to be leaders. And what that means is you're looking for people who are faithful, who are available, and they're teachable. You know, so faithful meaning like when you ask them to do something, they do it, and faithful to their walk with Jesus. You know, those are the people that you want to recruit on your team. And then they need to be available people, because people who say that they're constantly busy all the time, you know, like, oh yeah, I'll be there, I'll come and help you, assist you with Sunday school. But then like, oh, I'm so busy, I couldn't get there. You know, let me just say this, someone who says they're always busy or is committed to everything is actually committed to nothing, you know? And so you want people who say, I'm available for your team, I'm ready to be a part of it. And the last thing is, you know, they need to be teachable people, right? So like, being on your team, you're going to do things wrong, and you need to be able to have people who say, yo, I did that wrong, can you teach me to make me better? Those things people need to bring to the table. What you as a leader give them is, so when they come to you fat, you turn them into people of faith. You help them with, so if they're faithful and available, you give them I, which is you help them with their influence, and then you give them H, you help them get healthy and with their walk with Jesus. And so they come to you fat, under your team, they become people of faith. And that's how you can have a well-rounded leader.
I think we established the traits that we want to see in a leader. So like my next question is, you're part of a team, and for every team, for every church, you need a vision, you need a mission, you need vision is so big in any team setting. People need to know why I'm a part of this team. People need to know, hey, why am I doing this? Oh, I come to church every single Sunday. I serve every Sunday, but I have no idea why I serve. So like, if you can talk more about, what are practical ways to understand the mission, to telling your team, hey, this is why we do this. What are some practical ways you can like communicate with your team about vision and mission? Yeah, anyone can start with that.
The leadership, all leaders read books.
That's good.
I always tell people, what is your reading? I watch them, what they read. One of the stories you hear it all the time by books. I don't know if it's a real story. I don't know if it's a mythical story. It happened in Japan. In 1930s, they did a study on monkeys. Sweet potatoes were given to monkeys. They got the monkey. Monkey got the sweet potato. They started to eat, but when they started to eat, that monkey started to eat with the dirt, so it tastes bad. So in that study, it says on the 18-month-old monkey went and washed that sweet potato in the stream. Then it ate. Then that monkey went and told the mother, and mother did the same. So later, some months later, the study says when you pass 99 monkey, started to do the same, washing the sweet potato and eating. Then after 99, it went to the next island. The monkey started to wash the sweet potato and eat. It started with the one monkey. Vision is like that. It started with the one person. When it passed to 99, that's the study says. Once you pass 99, then it will catch the village, or the congregation, or the society, or a corporation. That's what vision is all about.
Yeah. Okay, so also when I think of vision, it's a picture of a future that produces passion. So anytime you are with your leaders, your group, the people who are following you, I think it's always important to sit back and realize, okay, again, where do we see ourselves 30 years from now? Where do we see ourselves later on? And that picture is going to motivate you and remind you why you are doing what you are doing. So even, like for me right now, I'm starting a debate team at the school I work at, and something I actually forgot, ironically, is why, the vision of what we're doing. And my students had to kind of remind me, because some students, they just wanted to join debate team because they like to argue, and they like to talk. And I was, at first when I had the first meeting and I made an announcement and called different students to come, we had a small group of kids who actually came out. I think it was like 5 or 6 students. And the students had to ask me, like, you have to remind the other students, especially when you're like promoting our club, why is debate good? Like, why does it help you? Why do you want to be a part of this club? So I think just like always reminding your team, and even starting your meetings with just a reminder of why what you're doing is important. And that goes into all facets of your career. When I sit with my students, they were doing this activity where they were basically having to write a theme statement. And I stopped and I asked them, why are you doing this right now? And one of my students, who is really annoying, raised his hand, and he said, well, I'm doing this because you told me to do this. And I think that's another thing to point out too, when someone's vision is not rooted in, like the vision, the reason why they're doing something isn't enough to produce passion. Because if you're only doing something because I'm telling you to do it, that's not going to be enough to motivate you long term. And I had to stop him and say, no, you're doing this because you are going to become a better writer by doing this. You are going to perform better. When you go on later on in life, you are going to have the skill, and this is going to be really important for you to carry on. So I think as a leader, it's important to have that picture of the future that produces passion, and to remember to ask your leaders, why are we doing this? Why are we partaking in this? Because that ultimately is going to motivate them.
You want me to share? Or?
Yeah, I could.
Yeah, you.
Yeah.
You can share.
Yeah, I mean, like, especially in context of like leading a team.
Yeah.
If you don't lead with vision, initially, while people will join like your team, like it could be your basketball team, it could be a team at church, it could be a team at school. Initially, why people join, if there's no vision, is they join because they like you, right? And so people's love for the team is really built on a personality. And you'll notice that when a personality moves on, the team goes away too. And that's unfortunately what happens in most churches too, right? Everyone builds all their love and hopes around a person, and when that person moves on, everything in the church collapses. And that's a key sign that there's no vision in the church. People are basing everything they do on a person. But and when the person is gone, you lose your way. And so, like both the panelists shared, like when you lose your way, it's because you lost your why. You don't know why you're doing something until you lost your way. And that's vision. Vision is why we are doing something. So if you have a strong vision in a church, it doesn't matter who's leading. That person is just there to facilitate the vision that everybody already is bought into. Right? So as you have leadership transition at every single level in your church, it won't impact your church because everyone knows why they're there. Right? And so, like we shared, vision in its essence is an attractive picture of an attainable reality. It needs to be attractive, and what you're casting vision on has to be attainable. So vision is like a rubber band. If you stretch it, if this is where we are and where we're going is there, and you're stretching your people to get there, if it's too far away, it's not attainable, vision will break and everyone will be super frustrated. Nobody wants to follow you either because your vision is ridiculous. It's too far away. But then there are some leaders who are too safe, and where they want to go is not far away enough. And you can attain that tomorrow. So when they're like, hey guys, we're going to have like 10 people come, tomorrow. Like, there's more than 10 people here right now. Like, that's easily attainable. It's not attractive anymore. And so vision needs to have that appropriate amount of tension, like a rubber band. Because if you don't stretch a rubber band, it does nothing. If you stretch a rubber band too much, it breaks. But when you have the right amount of stretch, it'll actually produce power, right? It goes forward, it does something. So that's what vision should do. And so one easy way to cast vision, the way I do it, and different leaders do different things, is to tell stories. It's always great to tell stories about what the attractive future could look like. And Jesus did that all the time. He would tell stories about what it could look like. And when people get that story in their mind, they yearn for that future. And then they don't lose their way. They don't lose their way.
Like one thing I tell my team when I lead is always connect the dots. Every role in the church is vital. I remember, 7, 8 years ago, I used to, so a couple of people, we used to always organize chairs and like fix the chairs in the church, clean up, pick up garbage and such, and I was just annoyed. I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't want to pick up garbage and fix the chairs, but if you think about it, if we had disorganized chairs, garbage all over the place, and if we have a new person coming into church, how would they feel? They would be like, oh, is this a church? Is this really a church? Like, they'll probably think other thoughts, and, even like, when I see like, people like, Regin, he's part of our production team, people don't think his role is actually big, he actually does a lot, people don't know what he does, but everything here you see, the lights, TVs, sound, it's all because of his team, like Regin and his team. Every single role in the church, little or small, it plays a huge part into someone coming into our church and potentially following Jesus, because that's part of the whole experience. So yeah, I think connecting the dots is really big, for it being in a team setting. This can apply to church, your workplace. Like, this is just leadership 101. It could apply anywhere. Every role is vital. That's the basics. A question about teams and such is that many of us serve, especially in our church, many of us serve multiple positions. And one thing that comes up is, being burnt out. And, we shouldn't be burnt out, but what are ways to avoid being burnt out? How can we remind ourselves, hey, there's other ways to overcome that certain obstacle? What are ways to not be burnt out when we serve and such?
Okay, so later on we're going to be answering questions about books, but one book that I highly recommend and actually shares this visual is called Habitudes, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's habits and attitudes that you want to adopt. And one of the images that has always struck with me, and it's something that I continually try to practice, is there's basically an image of a taxi cab. And the idea behind it is, if you're going to go into a taxi, you have to count the cost or know that you can pay for it before you go. And I remember I shared this once before, my mom was laughing because she knows that I go into taxi sometimes when I don't have cash, and then I come home and ask her for the cash. So I do not always count the cost before I go into a taxi, but the idea is there. And especially within our culture, I feel like it's like this within our culture, just like American culture in general, we want to say yes to everything. We want to do everything. We want to accomplish everything. But something we need to continually challenge ourselves to do is ask ourselves if we can really lay down the plans, if we could really follow through with what we were planning to do. And there's actually a Bible story that the habit you mentioned of basically building a tower. Like, any man who's building a tower, will they not count the cost before they begin to build that tower? And in the same way that when we say yes to certain responsibilities, are we sitting down and counting the cost and seeing whether or not we can actually handle everything asked of us? And I have been on the other side of that, where I have said yes to way too many things, and even currently right now in my life, I've been having a season where I need to say no to some things. But at the same time, you as a leader looking at what you realistically can do, because just like what you were saying before, like, if you are committed to so many different things and you're not doing any of them well, like, you're not actually leading anything. So before you say yes, or even currently right now in your season, know that you can say no. And Bill Heibels, someone I love, like an amazing leader, he's pastor of Willow Creek Community Church. I don't know if that's the correct name. But one thing he said that really stuck with me in one of his books was, no one is like holding a gun to your head. Like, no one's making you say yes to all of these commitments. You are the reason why your schedule is overpacked. So as a leader, like, thinking carefully, counting the cost, and acknowledging that you're the reason why maybe you have too much on your plate right now.
Two thoughts on burnout, very similar to that, is your life is like a zero-sum game, meaning that if you say yes to something, it means that you inherently are saying no to something else. So you can easily think that you're not. You can be like, oh, I can do all these things in church, I can do all these things in my community, I can do all these things at work, I'll say yes, yes, yes. And you think you're not saying no to anybody, but really you're saying no to yourself. Like, you're saying no to your rest, you're saying no to exercise, you're saying no to not eating well, you're saying no to like your quiet times with God, you're saying no to all these things, and you yourself are being impacted by all your yeses. And you'll find that sometimes the doors of opportunity are actually end up becoming the doors to your demise. Because as more and more opportunities open up, you start taking them, and those opportunities become an idol for you, and you actually end up destroying your private life with God, which is like, Pastor and I talked all morning about how great ministers of God can find themselves in really terrible places because their platform, their opportunities become their idol, and their relationship with God is gone because it all started with saying yes, yes, yes over and over again. And so the antidote to start saying no more often is to ensure that you have good people around you to say yes for you. So like, for example, I was telling Pastor this too, every time I say no to somebody about speaking at their church, I usually reply with an email with 10 other people they can ask, right? Like, consider me delegating opportunity to other people. And so those are kind of two ways to think about burnout. Like, it's a zero-sum game. If you say yes to something, you're inherently saying no to something else. And when you say no, consider giving it to somebody else.
Every church you have a Sunday school ministries. Baptist churches came out with the idea to run the best Sunday school, how they do in the leadership. They don't have one teacher for any class. They have 7 or 5 teachers in every classes. So when you have 7 people or 5 people teaching the students, they never need to be burned out. So what most of the church does, we don't do that either. Most of the church do is we assign a teacher there. That teacher is burnt out every single Sundays, and because that teacher never used another, I do not want to use assistant, but that's the wrong way to do it. If you 2 people or 3 people are leading a Sunday school class, so if you're missing one day, other person not replacing you, other person is ministering just with you. So that's the best way to avoid the burnout. And that's what we do in most of our ministries. If you see it, I don't have one person in any ministry. Yeah. If you look at anywhere, you never see a one person in my ministry. I don't do that. The reason is burnout is very easy.
Yeah, you actually answered my next question. It's really healthy to have one person always with you when you're leading something. You know, the question that you should always be asking, hey, who am I training while I'm leading this? You know, because we always want to invest in the next generation. If you're leading everything by yourself for like the next 10 years, you're doing it wrong. You need someone by your side, someone that you're training constantly to really take over eventually. Because you know we're in the ministry of building people up and investing in people and developing people. So I really do think I agree with what Pastor Ben said. Always have someone with you, someone younger than you that you can teach. You know, one big thing that we've been mentioning is that you have to be teachable. As a leader, you should be teachable. You should be wanting to learn more and more. So the next question that I have is a little of a broad question, but what are some challenges that you face as a leader? Yeah, what are like some challenges? Yeah, I know there's probably a lot of challenges that we all face as leaders, but if you can like individually, you know, pick one certain challenge that you face, and you can talk about that.
Okay, so for me, I think my personal biggest challenge would have to be character, because when I think back to the time that I led with university, it was an amazing time. Like I learned so much in terms of leadership, but one thing that was really lacking was my own individual walk with God. I had a walk with God, but it wasn't nearly as strong as what it should have been, especially considering the leadership positions I was taking on. I spent time with God, but it was always like, I feel like God always got put to the back burner for me. And when you're a leader and you're not leading with integrity, like I feel like there's so many like parables and stories that talk about it, but how can you really grow? How can your ministries really grow if you're lacking integrity in your own life? So I think for me, and like the image I always think about is the iceberg, which basically, like when you think of like the ship Titanic, like what sunk Titanic? Like you guys can answer, what sunk Titanic? The iceberg, but like what part of the iceberg? The bottom of the iceberg. Apparently, like when they saw the iceberg from the top, it looked perfectly fine, looked small, didn't look like it would do anything. But what they didn't realize was what was underneath was a massive rock, like a huge rock. And one image that Habitudes and also a lot of other books, there's a course called Emotionally Healthy Spirituality, and they also talk about this. But the idea behind it is it's what's underneath the surface that sinks the ship. So in your leadership, and there have been so many times where I feel like I've had burnout, or I've just like gone back and been like, what am I doing? And it has to go with the fact that what was underneath the ship, my time alone with God, my integrity, that wasn't as strong as it should have been. And if there's one thing I would say a leader needs, it's that integrity.
Yeah, so what are like some challenges that you face being a leader? Yeah, one specific.
I think, right, if I could talk about current challenge I'm facing,
yeah.
Is the fear of letting people down and upsetting people. And that's kind of inherently the job of a leader. Like, leaders have to make decisions, right? And oftentimes when you make a decision, it's going to let some people down, and it's going to make people upset. And you just gotta learn to lead in that tension. And I'm really kind of young at that. I'm not the best at, people being upset at me all the time, or, one of my mentors says, as you continue to grow in your leadership, you start to learn that leadership is understanding the rate at which you can let people down. This is such a sad way to talk about leadership, but, just to understand, like, what is the rate that I can let people down? So I can't make a bunch of decisions because then it's just too quickly, I'm letting down too many people all at once. So it's how to, like, slowly say, hey, we're not going in that direction. I'm sorry for letting you down. I'm sorry for making you upset. And with the rise of social media, man, people will let you know that they are not happy with what you've done. And you gotta learn how to, in some way, you gotta learn how to kind of grow some thick skin around that. But everyone's got an opinion about your leadership, and you just have to learn how, and you're just gonna let people down if you don't lead. You can't make everybody down.
There are many challenges in leadership. As an individual, for every, especially for the initial level or any area, believing in that person himself, or believing in yourself. If you are assigned to a task, or you are in a place, if you feel like you are not capable to do it, it's a danger. You are capable, otherwise you will not. That is the catch. If you are there, if God placed you, or if you are in that job, if example in a workplace, if a new office started, a new assignment started, a new territory, okay, the boss come and can you do that? The reason the boss asking you because you are able to do it, otherwise he wouldn't do it, or she wouldn't do it. But the problem with the person is, am I able to do it? I feel insecure. If I feel insecure in my office, I will never be able to perform the way God wants. So the believe in yourself, that is tough. That is tough. I'm a pastor of a church in a different level and different audience. Am I able to do it? It's a big challenge, but I know it's a bold statement. Yes, we can. So that belief in you will give you strength to do it.
Yes, that's good. Very similar to what Linson was saying is that, for me, I'm always trying to see if I can please everyone, but try to make everyone happy. And at the end of the day, like, that's not gonna happen. It's never gonna happen. People are gonna disappoint you. People are not gonna agree with you. And at the end of the day, it's not a pleasing ministry. It's more of like honoring God and listening to God's voice. That's the number one thing that everyone should be doing, because there's gonna be disagreements along the way, but the number one thing is listening to God's voice. What does God have to say about it? Not people, but what does God have to say about it? So going to my next question is, what are some effective ways to continually ensure that you grow as a consistent leader and not be stagnant?
So I'm actually stealing something that I've heard someone else say, but it actually had a very big impact on me once I tried to follow through with it. But one thing you should always seek out are mentors in your life. And I feel like that in particular can be really hard, because we can always think of someone we can pour into, someone that we can invest in, but I think it's a lot harder to think, who can I learn from? Who can I grow from? But and a piece of advice I was given was basically pinpoint someone who basically leads in a way that you want to in a particular area in your life. Let's say for me, for instance, there's someone who she's my teacher mom. I love her. She's amazing. She's who I want to be one day. And I spoke with her and just told her I want to learn from her. And you find that person and you ask them for coffee, or ask them for lunch, and you pay for their lunch and their coffee, and then you just basically ask them questions and learn from them. And that's one way for you to challenge yourself to continually grow, because you need to seek out people who are doing things that you want to be doing so that you can learn from them.
Yeah, I would say, so what I usually tell my folks on my team is if they tell me they want to grow in their leadership, the next thing I try to do is give them some kind of stretch assignment. So something that is just beyond their capabilities, and I try to do my best to mentor them. And so the best thing to do is ask yourself, in your realm of responsibility, what's just outside of that realm where you need to take a risk, you know? And you should always be doing that, like every year. Pick something brand new. Let's say you're the drummer of your church, and so you're saying, I'm going to learn how to do this kind of style of drumming this year, and I'm going to start doing that on Sunday mornings. Even though that's super risky for me, and I don't know if I'm going to be great at it, and I'm going to learn how to do that. Or it could be that you're a communicator, and you're going to ask your pastor, can I up my speaking from once a quarter to once a month, and I want you to give me feedback. At my church, my pastor, would ask me to speak on the epistles more. And like, if you notice, for those, I know you guys haven't heard me preach a lot, but I love Old Testament and I love Jesus' parables. I don't preach a lot from the epistles because half the time I don't understand it. So, and so pastor, like for one whole year, just said anytime I got up front, I need to really start preaching out of the epistles. And so that became like a stretch assignment for me. I'm going to start preaching out of Paul's letters to these churches and see what happens. There are times where I miss the mark and, pastor had to correct me a little bit, There are other times he would say, that was awesome, good job. But that was one way that I stretched myself. And so every leader, one way to keep stagnating is take stretches.
Yeah, you need to. The Old Testament you will see when people of Israel. By the way, the leadership, the best book is the Bible.
That's true.
The leadership, Jesus' style of leadership is awesome. Even the way he did it.
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, you will see while they were carrying the ark, God told Moses, tell those priests to carry 200 yards front of the people so they can see the ark when they go. So if we don't stretch out as leaders, they need to catch up with you all the time. If the leader is a people, I'm talking about the leaders. The people need to push you. You're not a leader. Leader need to be 200. I'm not talking away from people. I'm talking about the vision-wise. You need to be 2,000 feet away for them. So when the audience, when the people come with you, you need to catch up with them. And don't waste of it. Somebody use audio. No waste of it. I'm not saying for the sake of some music and talking. There are things. The leaders still using. I only want to use Facebook. What? I learned it. No, but Instagram come. Okay, you should already have it. You're already using. By the time people come, oh yeah, no, just go into my site. That's the way you should be, every leader.
Being a visionary is a huge part. If what Pastor Ben said, looking 10 years ahead of yourself, 10 years down the road. If you're just stagnant in your walk, if you're just like, oh, I'm looking at 2017, that's all I want to focus on, you're doing it wrong. And another thing that you guys mentioned was about risk. As a follower of Jesus, as Christians, you're taking risk. If you're not taking risk, then I don't know if you're doing it right. Because Jesus is continually inviting us to take risk in our walk. Because if we were comfortable, God's not inviting us to a comfortable life. Like, He wants us to be uncomfortable and really take risk. So, what you guys said, you guys really nailed it on the point. And my next question would be, is what advice would you give to someone that's going into leadership for the first time? Someone that's never been in a team or a leader and they're going to leadership for the first time. What would you say to them? Some advice.
So, especially there's a lot of you that are young here, and if you get invited into a leadership position at church, the first thing I want you to hear, hopefully your leaders will tell you this too, but one thing I want you to hear from me is you have the permission to fail. There's nothing helps a brand new leader. Nothing is less helpful than a high pressure situation. So when you invite someone into leadership and say, if you mess this up, you will ruin this church. You will trying again, all that blew up in your face. You're like, hopefully you have a church that loves you, shows you enough grace, through that. And so, so my advice to you is show yourself grace and be okay to fail, because that's part of leaders. I mean, all of us have awesome failure stories that we can probably share. Right? I have so many failure stories. Sometimes when I'm with my other regional directors around the country, one of the things that we love to talk about is our worst mistake. And then, after you have enough time, enough space from your worst mistake, you can actually talk about it, and it's actually kind of funny how bad you were, But if there were not people who let me do that, I wouldn't be here today. So go out there. It's okay. It's okay if you fail. You still got to go for it.
So I think one thing I'd also say, and it's like echoing what I've been saying, I guess I've been repeating a lot of, is just watch. Actually something recently I've been hearing is the rhythm of your life. So watch out for the rhythm of your life, especially when you are starting a new leadership position, because one thing I made the mistake of was when I entered leadership positions, I would get so wrapped up into it that I would become so stressed. And I remember telling people I couldn't talk to them because I was too busy doing my leadership. People legitimately just wanted to sit down and talk with me, and I'm like, I have to go do my leadership duties or whatever. And that's one of the biggest mistakes you can make, because one thing I've been challenged with, especially this particular week, was looking at the life of Jesus. And I was talking to my mom about this because I was listening to a sermon, and when you look at Jesus, was he rushing anywhere? Was he super stressed out? I can't talk with you. I have this quota to reach. He wasn't like that. So why are we, so stressed out of our head, acting like what we're doing is more important than our own emotional and mental health? So step into that leadership position, but at the same time, watch the rhythm of your life. Spend time with God during the day. Spend time with God middle of the day, in addition to the end of the day and the beginning of the day. There's a rhythm that's recommended, either beginning of the day and afternoon, or afternoon and evening. So try a rhythm where maybe you can spend time with God more times during the day, and go into that leadership position, but remember to not forget that essential rhythm of spending and being with God.
Yeah, which I don't want to repeat what they said. That is all key points. With that, whenever you start anything, develop somebody with you to help you. So there was one conference, PCNI conference. One of the convener of a conference, he don't want to use anybody. He literally licked all the envelope he mailed to everyone in the country. It literally happened. This guy, this pastor, it's long time before the email, they used to mail to, I'm talking 20,000, I don't know how many mailing went to, because he was afraid to use somebody to help. So when you start something new, just like Linson said, the leaders who are assigning, the way we do is, as you know, I assign, any leaders come up, I tell them, fail, fine, blame it on me. Blame it on me. I'll take it for you. So if once a leader once the person who's starting to know, the leader will take that risk, then you have the confidence. But not to be allowed, develop somebody with you. This way you won't fail.
One thing that I always tell my team is, do not be task-oriented, but be mission-oriented. For me personally, I'm more of an administrative person, so I love the numbers, I love documents, I love Google Documents, and sometimes I get too consumed with the numbers, with the documents. And I remember serving as a coordinator last year for InterVarsity, and all I did was look at numbers and documents, and that was my job 24/7. And it came to a point where I was like, wait, what am I doing? I totally forgot why, why do I do this? It's not about the numbers, it's really about the lives. At the end of the day, it's about the lives, about people's lives being transformed. How are they experiencing Jesus? That's what matters. And sometimes we focus on the task too much, hey, Rich, can you do that? Can you do this? Hey, can you do that? At the end of the day, take a step back it's always healthy to take a step back and look and reflect on what you're doing. For my team, for our leadership team last year, well, one thing that we always did was, hey, let's stop everything. Let's just sit down, spend a good 2 hours just spending time in the Word and praying. As cliche as it might sound, just literally just stop everything you're doing, just get a passage, read it, and just pray. Just pray. Because there's so much truth in the Word of God, and God has so much to say to us. So yeah, that's one thing I personally I've been doing. And I'm sure all of you guys have been doing the same as well. So right now, what we want to do is we want to take a 5-minute break, and actually we want you guys to actually text some questions that you might have. You've been hearing questions and answers for the past 30 minutes, so we want you to text some questions. The number is on the screen. If you can't read it, it says 516-430-7695. So that's the number. Any question that you may have, you can text it, and we'll be answering those questions in 5 minutes. Yeah, you guys, there's coffee and water on the other side, so just take about 3 or 4 minutes. Please come back after, so please come back. Don't spend 20 minutes there. All right, guys, let's all take a seat, and let's get back together. So we want to keep the session going, and we want to answer your questions right now. Thank you for everyone that texted your questions. You still can text your questions. If you have more questions that come up, please text it at that number. So our first question, this is an interesting question. Is there a difference between the leadership of a man or a woman? Oh, yeah. Is there a difference between the leadership of a man or a woman? Yeah.
Is that Abby's question?
You can tackle it however you want to tackle it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will answer that. There is no such thing.
There isn't.
There is no such thing. And I preach it all the time. When men said no, God will raise up women. If you are called to do anything in the planet, God created you equally. There are positions and there are levels there are assignments God assigned in a different level. Example, if men want to get pregnant, cannot do it. I know it's a tough statement. Because God called a woman to get pregnant. That is, if I'm a leader, okay, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I want to get pregnant. No, it's not possible. God did not created you that way. But if you want to do a task in this world, God called you to anything. If God placed that in you. And when I say God placed in you, I don't mean just church. I meant leadership in anything. There's no such difference at all.
Thank you for answering. Our next question is, what do you do if you feel like no one is interested in volunteering in your area of leadership and you feel like you're in it alone?
Good. So, if this is you and you find yourself doing ministry alone, oftentimes, there are a couple places to turn. Okay, so the first place to turn is to God. Oftentimes when we enter into these leadership conversations, we want to answer organizationally or strategically, but when you're doing ministry, the power of ministry does not come by having a lot of people. The power of ministry comes through the power of the Holy Spirit working in you and bringing the right people around you. I remember when I was younger, my dad used to always say, remind me of Gideon and his 300, and he would always tell me, you do not need a lot of people to accomplish great things for God. And so I would always pray, God, send me one other person with just as much vision as me, and me and that person together can accomplish a lot for the Lord. And so don't look around at other teams and say, wow, they got 10, 15, 20 teams because that's the cool team in town, right? Oftentimes, cool teams don't do anything except stay cool. That's it. I don't want to be part of a cool team. I want to be a part of a team that actually gets something done. And so pray to God for one person to join you. You'll be surprised if you pray very specifically. Like, for example, I'll share a story about this. At Baylor University in Waco, Texas, we were starting a new University chapter there. And there were only like 3 women at the very beginning starting this chapter. And I asked them, what do you guys need? It's hard to get people to join our team. If we don't have more people, we're not going to be able to start this university chapter. And I asked them, what do you need? They said, it would be great to have one strong male leader. I said, be more specific. And they said, more specific? And I said, yeah, what kind of leader do you want? They said, well, it would be great if they were like a junior, and it would be great if he was African American, because we need to reach more African Americans on campus. So I want a junior male leader, African American. I was like, okay, let's pray. We're in the student union, so let's pray to God for that person. And so I'm not even kidding you. While we are praying, and as soon as we said amen, this young African American guy walks up to our table and asks, hey, who are you guys? And we're like, we're InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. And he goes, oh, okay, what do you guys do? So we're a Christian ministry on campus. I said, what's your name? He goes, Christian. And I was like, for real? Like your name is Christian or you are a Christian? He's like, both. And he goes, well, it's crazy. I was just walking around campus and I was asking the Lord for some place to get involved, and I looked up and I saw you guys praying over here, so I just felt like I was supposed to come here. And I looked at those 3 women and I said, answer prayer right here. Here's your leader. And so sometimes when you find yourself alone, pray. Ask for that one person. You'll be surprised. It might not be that specific person. It could be somebody else, like when Paul was praying to go to Macedonia, he saw a Macedonian man. When he gets to Macedonia, he meets a woman, named Lydia, right? And so it could be someone else, but just ask for that one other person. Don't ask for a huge group. So I don't know if that completely answers the question. If somebody wants to ask a follow-up question, you can. Don't be discouraged. Play it for the long haul.
Yeah, that's good. I think the first part of the question is, what do you do if you feel like no one's interested in volunteering in your area of leadership? Honestly, I think it goes back to casting vision in a sense. If no one's interested, you have to ask yourself, are you effectively casting vision to people about what this specific area of ministry that you are a part of? As we said before, you can't just expect people to come and join and serve. Like, people aren't just gonna come, I mean, there might be a few, but like, people are naturally not gonna come. You're gonna have to tell them, hey, this is the ministry that I'm doing, that I'm leading. This is what we do, and this is how we impact people's lives. If you're just straight up saying, hey, can you just come and help out? Like, people can say yes or no, but they don't know why they're doing it. So you have to effectively tell people, hey, this is why we're doing this. So that kind of answers also the first part of the question, in a sense. Yeah. The next question is, how do you find a balance between being too negative and self-critical and correctly identifying your own faults in leadership? How do you find a balance between being too negative and self-critical and correctly identifying your own faults in leadership? Yeah.
So I think that this question kind of hits home for me because I can be a very cynical person. I can think very negatively about myself and others and situations in general. And I think like one of the best things to do is like, first be open to criticism. And that's one of the hardest things to do. I actually I have an instance where I definitely was not open to it. My mom, we were driving and literally there was a law where you have to move to a different lane, and I just didn't want her to correct my driving because it's so painful to be corrected. That's really what it is, and I didn't want to hear from her. I don't care. I know the laws. I passed my driving test, whatever. But that's not who you want to be as a leader. So first, if someone is coming to you with criticism and they're giving you advice, be open to it. Be receptive to it. And actually, you mentioned something earlier that I think would be helpful. If you're speaking at church, go and ask for feedback. Yeah. So ask other people, and they can probably look at your situation in a less biased way than maybe you could look at it yourself, and they could give you feedback on how to change. And I think that's a good way of kind of deciding for yourself, what ways do I really need to change, and what ways am I okay? And also just start to get into a practice of appreciating and showing gratitude for different things in your life, and even yourself, because I think once you get into that practice, then you can avoid that being overly negative and overly critical of yourself, because you're starting to appreciate the different things and the different ways God has gifted you in your life. Because it is important to have improvement, and it is important to make changes, but at the same time, you need to appreciate and celebrate things when they go well as well.
Yeah, I think that hits home. Do you guys have anything shared with that, or?
One time, one pastor, two incidents. One pastor came to John Maxwell. He followed him. I want to learn leadership. So he went to meetings after meetings after meetings. He said he even went to the bathroom where John Maxwell went to the bathroom just to follow him. Then he asked him, "What do you want?" He told him. He asked him, "Listen, I want in this particular area and that area. Can you give me a suggestion? How can I solve it?" He replied to him, "Hire somebody better than you." He got so angry, the pastor. He walked away. He thought about it. He thought about it. It is correct. It is very hard for us we all want to be Superman. We all want to know everything, do everything, and find everything. Find somebody better than you in that area. Don't be afraid. I don't need to know everything in the church to own a church. You don't need to know everything in a Sunday school to lead a Sunday school. Get that in mind, not easy. Okay, that might be the toughest thing to overcome.
I think it goes back to what we mentioned before. Are you teachable? If you're not teachable, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard for you. You have to be teachable, always willing to learn more. As a leader, leaders are readers. That's what we say. The more you read, the more you know. And you always have to be receptive to criticism, like what we said before, because at the end of the day, it's about improving yourself. If you don't receive the feedback, you're just going to be stagnant. And as leaders, we want to be growing in our leadership. And this leads to my next question is all these questions kind of overlap with that's what I noticed when reading these questions. One question is, how do you eliminate your own ego and the tendency to think you know it all when in leadership? Which is we just answer that, that's what I just so next question is, when in leadership, particularly in a smaller setting, how do you deal with people taking things personally? How do you deal with people taking things personally?
Hire someone better. I'm just kidding.
Don't do that.
That's awkward. Okay, whenever you are approaching any type of a conflict, especially between leaders, there are 3 levels to every conflict. There's actually the issue that you're having. That's the first layer. That's where most people clash. The next layer is the feelings that you're having about that issue. And the last thing is the person's identity. And I'll just be honest, I'm just going to say this because we're in a safe company here, but Indian people are the worst at this. When we have a conflict with people, we think when someone is critiquing the issue or your skills, we think that it is about who we are, our identity. If someone said, I was a terrible servant, we think they said, you are a terrible person. No. Today, I said I did not understand. Oh, I'm a misunderstood person. No. And so when someone says something personally, we need to understand as leaders that somewhere deep down inside, they have taken that all the way down to who they are. And as leaders, we need to work that onion backwards. We need to say, okay, what exactly happened? What exactly was the issue? What are you feeling right now? And so you start saying, woman of God or man of God, that is not what people think about you. This is who you are, and you build their identity back up. Then you say, whenever this person said this to you, what were you feeling about that? Oh, okay, because those feelings are not who you are, it's just some feeling you had. Then you work your way up to the issue. So what happened during that time was this, and you work yourself out. And so you can either work yourself up or you can work yourself back down. Either way, you need to address all three of these things if you really want a conflict to be resolved. In the Indian community, we get hurt in our identity, and then we solve only the issue. So, like one of my favorite things that pastors do, or any leaders do, say, if I have offended anyone here at any time in the last year, and this is usually during Washington service, if I have done anything to anyone this year, I ask that you forgive me. That's just solving the issue, like the circumstance. But where people are really hurt is somewhere down deep in their identity, you've wounded them. And a good leader works through all three of those layers. And if you do a good job, that typically means one-on-one meeting, and work through all those things. And that's the best way to sometimes help people when they take things too personally.
Yeah, just a one-on-one thing. And also you can start with the positive and correct the issue, then come back again to positive.
Yeah.
So that when you communicate with your peers or whoever that issue have failed or whatever the issue is, you start with something positive, then you address the issue, short, then you come back again, another area positive for that person, so that person will not feel is offended in that level. So you're again going back to the personality always, and we all take that into man, he talk to me like that. That is why you gotta go start with the positive, end with the positive. In that positive, you bring him back that personality. It's not about you. It's us. In that area we failed. We need to move on. So,
one more thing about conflict is, in the Indian community especially, if you do not tend to conflict, if you don't go towards conflict and fix it, it grows. It grows really fast. Like, you let it go for maybe 24, 48 hours, people in India will. It'll just go so fast, and so I always tell people you need to go towards the heat. If there's a problem, as a leader, you need to go towards it. Go find the issue, go towards the people as quickly as you can, and try to resolve things as quickly as possible. Remember, and then I love the positivity sandwich. Start positive, say the negative thing, and positive, give them a positive sandwich, and they'll feel like, oh, okay, this person does care about me. But there's something about conflict in churches that need to be resolved quickly. If possible, if it happened in private, take care of it in private. Don't bring it into public, take care of it quickly and privately. You'll find that your church will model you as you do that. Because we have bad conflict resolution in church, then if it's bad conflict resolution in leadership, it is definitely bad conflict resolution in the congregation. So we need to do our best to model that in everything that we do. Whether it's worship team or Sunday school or AV team, we gotta resolve conflict quickly. Don't resolve conflict over text message. Okay? That's the worst. You're like, are you mad at me? You're not solving anything. Don't do that. Meet people face to face if possible. If you can't, get on a FaceTime so you can see people's faces and resolve conflict, because we're the body of Christ. If we don't resolve conflict, how are we going to see any of the conflicts outside these walls? We think.
Yeah.
So one thing I also want to add on is, and I think a couple of you guys know that I've been taking this course. It's called Emotionally Healthy Skills, and I would highly recommend it. I actually would love to, like, they recommend taking the course 3 times, but you take it the first time and then you can bring it other places the second time, so you can actually do it within a small group. But they have a lot of skills that they recommend for, you know, dealing with conflict, because my license is special education, and for my students, a lot of times what I do is I offer support. So if you're writing an essay, I will provide you with an outline. Or if you are writing at the beginning of a paragraph, I will give you a sentence starter. And I feel like sometimes in our lives, we need some scaffolds, we need some help and support for how we deal with other people. And that's essentially what it is. So it's small things like, there's a skill that they mentioned called the community temperature reading. And it starts off by telling you to appreciate the other people in your life. Just mention some things that you appreciate. And I think that's something that's important for us to remember, because a lot of times, like, we are, like, from my personality, I always address conflict, or I always try to, but sometimes I don't take a step back and just tell people that I appreciate them, that I love them, that I care about them. And I think that's really important for us to do too, because we can get so concentrated on, like, whenever there's conflict or tension, that we just forget that, like, there's things that you appreciate and love about other people. That's all part of the equation, is feeling the good emotions and also feeling the bad emotions as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with everyone said. Just when we hear the word conflict or confrontation, some of us just freak out, like, no, I don't want to do that. But going back to what they said, I think words of affirmation, that's a huge part. Like, I remember last year when I was part of a team, and there was a conflict I had with one of our team members, and it was just building up, it was just like boiling up. And then, like, our president was like, Rich, you need to address this. So in our team meeting, like, that other person, we both talked it out in front of, like, everyone in our meeting. And first he was like, hey, say things that you like about the person, what they're doing. Hey, so-and-so, you're doing this well, you're doing this. Now, actually say how you're feeling right now. And once I did that, just felt so good. Everything just felt like I just released it all. And, you know, it turns out now we're, like, really good friends now. Yeah, and it's just crazy how just by doing a simple thing of, hey, words of affirmation, and then talking about the specific problem, it can go a long way. So, like, we need to develop that culture of, hey, if there ever is a conflict or a problem, let's actually talk it out in person. Like, there's a verse in, I think it's in Matthew, right? Or about just, like, conflict in general. Yeah, just, like, talking in person. You know, that's just, it goes a long way. So our next question is, we're kind of shifting gears, but how do you encourage a more innovative and creative way of thinking? I would assume in leadership. That was the question, yeah. So how do you encourage more innovative and creative ways of thinking? I would say just think outside the box, honestly. Like, for me, like, I consider myself a creative artist. I don't know, I guess, but the way I see it is, like, when it comes to church leadership, you know, it's always good to model, like, what, like, you know, like, for example, you know, for me, I'm into art a lot, so, like, I see, like, production and art designs that other churches do, and, like, that's an example. But for me, I don't want to copy that. That's a base. Now I want to do something else. I want to create our own identity. You know, always think outside the box. That's something you hear all the time. Hey, Rich, guys, always think outside, but actually do it. Take it into action. You know, take some risk. You know, that's one way of thinking creatively. That's my personal input. If you.
So actually, I follow this Instagram page, and I screenshot because I thought it might come in handy. It's from the Global Leadership Summit, and I'd love for us to go. So someone named Friedrich Karen said, you cannot make someone be creative, but you can model and inspire creativity. So I think, like, going off of what Richie was saying, like, that's what we can do. So if you yourself have creative ideas, or that you think a little bit differently, do that, show that. And if you see that in someone else, then foster that. Like, for instance, like Shayna, I think she's super creative. And I think, like, one thing, like, us as leaders can do is, like, we can, like, foster that and grow that. Like, she really wants to do, like, a paint night, you know? So, like, we're going to have a paint night. It's going to be really fun. But that's just one way, like, when you see it in other people, like, allow it to grow. And if you yourself are a creative person, like, embrace that and show that, because, you know, I think creativity is so hard, but if you show your creativity, it's just so beautiful. So it's something that's worth doing, and then you will continue to inspire other people around you.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add is creativity and innovation for creativity's sake actually doesn't get anywhere. But when you're creative because your church has like hit a barrier, right? Like you're like, hey, we can't get any further because we keep doing what we do and we keep getting what we get. You know, so you're designed perfectly to get what you get. If you're wondering, hey, why is our church not growing, or why are we not reaching this part of the community? That and then is really when creativity innovators need to step up. Because if you really want to get to that community, something about your organization has to change. And that's when you need the most creative people, right? And so, so I've seen churches who just try to be really creative, and at some point they just kind of fall off the rails. Like they're just way out there, nobody understands what they're doing anymore, because they're just trying to be creative, to be different and cool, right? But if you're really trying to reach a group of people, that's when you need your innovators. And because if you don't innovate, and you don't be creative, you will always be what you are now, forever.
Add to that, you need to have a goal, have a vision. So as a good leaders, throw the vision. The idea has to come from the people who know. That's the motivator. You see, some leaders dictate the way. As good leader, we never dictate the how we accomplish. We throw the vision in so the people can come up with the creativity, their own, so they'll enjoy to fulfill what we need to fulfill. That's the name.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, even like just in this topic, like if you're a creator, an artist, like innovator, like that's needed in the kingdom of God. Like, you know, we need that in church ministry. Like sometimes we kind of just push that aside, like, oh no, that's just a hobby. No, we need that in a church. Like we need people that think creatively, think differently. You know, it all adds up, you know, in the long run. So, you know, if you're in that category, never put yourself down. Always put yourself up and talk to leaders, talk to us, and you know, ways to implement, you know, the ways that we can use your gifts in the church ministry, because everything comes together. Yeah. I feel like we're gonna be shifting gears like every single question. So this is like, yeah. So this is now we're shifting gears to another kind of topic, but so I'm gonna read the question as it is. So there is passion in leadership, but shouldn't there also be respect for leaders and submit to their request or demand? That's the question. So you can phrase that. So there's passion in leadership, but shouldn't there also be respect for leaders and submit to their request or demand? Okay, so I guess what this person's saying is, yeah.
A good leader is a good follower. If you cannot follow, you're not a leader. You're a star. Never star, always isolate. Leader, always in a group. You got to be a follower. If you're not a follower, you're not a leader.
Yeah, I would add to that. Sometimes, you know, we have, sometimes we put leaders on a pedestal, and really the most important person in the church is not always the leader, it's the first follower. Right? It's the very, very first follower is typically the most important person in the organization. You know, there's this video, a viral video that you've probably all seen. It's about the crazy man dancing by himself. So there's this outdoor concert, and there's one man doing some weird dancing all by himself. It's a crazy man. You know, and everyone's looking at him like, that's crazy. Well, that's a leader, but what good is that if there's no one following him? And so the shift happens when the first guy decides to go and follow this guy and starts dancing crazy with him. Now it went from one crazy guy to a crazy guy with a follower. You know, and it was like, oh, something changed all of a sudden because now he has a follower. And so sometimes the passion, I've always found that I actually get very passionate when I am with a strong leader. Like I actually don't look for leadership opportunities. I love serving under strong leaders. And then I find that my leadership grows. Like if I can find a great pastor, if I can find a great organization, I can put myself behind somebody, my leadership actually grows as I respect the authority of this person in front of me. If you find inside of yourself that you are rebelling against that leader, that's usually a sense of pride in you, or it is a great sign that you should be released from that organization. You should probably go and find another leader to follow. Actually, you should have both. You should have respect for the person, and you should have passion for your leadership. If you're lacking one or the other, it's a sin.
That's good. Our next question is, what do you do when people are openly against your leadership? You're tackling those tough questions.
Yeah. Maybe they don't want to answer. When an apple is ripe, you gotta pluck it. If you don't take it, it ruins the whole environment. So anytime any leader grows to that level, I know it's a tough say, it is time to release that leader. So unless that person is released at the right time, that person is going to take the whole thing. It's a tough say, but that is the reality in leadership.
Yeah, I would say when someone is openly against you, I agree with Pastor. There are a couple of reasons why people are openly against you, right? If it is something to do with you personally, right, that should be taken care of in some of the questions we talked about before, right? You need to go talk to them one-on-one and find out. If they're openly against what your church or organization stands for, or the vision of your church, it's a great time to remove that. Like, you know, if the house is not united, it will not move forward. If the house divided will fall, right? And the great thing is, if it's in a church setting and someone doesn't agree with the vision and the leadership of the church, the organization, like I don't agree where this church is headed, then you need to have a conversation with that sister or brother and show them another church. You know, don't say, well, you're a bad person if you don't believe in our vision. That's not true. There's so many other churches here with a different vision. Let me help you find a church with that vision. You don't need to fight with our church and cause a problem because you're openly against our vision. I mean, that's just where we are going, you know, and that's where we're called to go. Let's go find another place for you. But so there's different reasons why people are openly against you. If it's personal, it should be highly personal. If it's organizational, it should be a certain way. Then there's another one that's very hard, is theologically. You know, and I'm finding more and more that the more and more clear you get about what you believe theologically, the more and more people will stand in opposition with you. You don't actually find people join you. You find that people oppose you theologically. And in those moments, it's okay. It's okay for Paul to look at Mark and say, we have to separate our ways. It's okay for ministers of the gospel to say, Paul and Apollos, they're different. You know, they got to do things different, right? That's okay. You know, you should split ways. I've often found don't spend time fighting with people about doctrine. It's a waste of time. You know, the moment that you start throwing mud on people, you find that you're losing ground. So you should, if you get into a theological debate, people are openly against you, just say, I admire your thoughts. Especially in social media, just say thank you. I just literally will say, when people are like, I don't agree with what you said, blah, 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 I'm like, hey, thanks for your thoughts. Just completely diffuse the situation. You don't need to go fight anybody about doctrine. You know? Unless they're inside your church and you want to disciple. But if they're on the outside of your church, then doctrine is doctrine. You believe what you want to believe.
Yeah, no, it's actually interesting because you see all these like theological debates on Facebook, and like everyone's like theologian all of a sudden. Everybody. Then in my mind, I'm like, can you say that in person, or is it just over a computer? Like my approach is like, let's sit down for coffee and talk about it instead of going on the internet and like exchanging words, and then it becomes more of like, it becomes more of like a debate that's not needed. You know, you can just do it in person. Why do it over like social media? That's yeah.
One thing about that is, if you don't, as a leader, you should diffuse those things in Facebook. You should get in there and say, hey, that's great thoughts. Yeah. Just diffuse it. Because if you don't, what you'll find is that becomes a witness to people who are not Christians.
Yeah.
When non-Christians see that Christians fight, in their mind it undermines that faith. And so I always tell my students, if you find yourself in a theological debate, you should have the humility to bow out of that debate. Because the greater good is to not fight with your brothers and sisters online. Instead, you should make as much peace as possible. Because especially people who are Muslim and Hindu, they watch that stuff. Especially if they're your friends, they have access to that, and they look at that and they're like, dude, Christians, they shake their head. So.
Yeah, that's good. Our next question is it's a little bit of a vague question. How do you fix problems in leadership? I feel like we are answering like all these, like it's all an
Tough question.
Yeah.
How to resolve problems in leadership.
It's kind of similar to like the conflict.
Going back to that incident in the Bible, Barnabas and Paul. There was a time in the book of Acts, they came to a conflict. And the second missionary journey, the conflict is real and genuine. And the problem is both are right. Barnabas is right and Paul is right. When you both in a conflict, if one person is wrong, he can fix it. When two people, both in conflict parties, that's where leadership comes into play. The one we talk about, the person who opposing you, most probably the problem is not that issue. The conflict is caused by God for separation. Nothing wrong with it. Bible says Barnabas and Paul departed two different directions, went in different way. Because of what Mark came as a leader, Silas became a leader, Timothy became a leader. So that conflict became a tool used by God to write Gospel of Mark. Otherwise, Mark would never write Gospel of Mark. So take the positive for the conflict. If it is a conflict between people, solve it. Some conflict you cannot solve it because both parties are right. So you cannot resolve the conflict. So don't try to resolve it, it will not work.
Yeah, I think this goes back to like what we've been talking about recently the past like it's like 20-30 minutes, yeah. If you guys asked the question and we didn't specifically answer your question, it's probably because we answered it before or we've been answering it throughout our conversation the past hour. So we want to conclude this session right now. We're thankful that you guys came out. Even though it might not look like a large amount of people came, this will make an impact. I hope this makes an impact in your life. You learn more about leadership, and for those who are aspiring to be leadership, I hope this helps out more. It gives you more incentive, opens your eyes to more about leadership. And we're going to be planning to do this every year. Next year, expect another leadership Q&A panel. So what I want to do is actually pray us out. We have food in the basement provided for all of us. So yeah, let's pray. Oh yeah. Any final thoughts? Anything you want to share?
Okay, so I guess my biggest takeaway is, again, as a leader, always first watch your walk with God. Spend time alone with God, spend time praying to God in community, and that should be the guide and the basis of everything you do, because leadership in the church, if you don't have that root in God, that's just like business strategies and techniques, and God doesn't need that. So spend time with God first and foremost.
Yeah, my thought to you all is don't complain about things that need to change. Go change them.
Take action.
And that's what leaders do. They don't complain. They say, let me get a couple people together, and the power of the Holy Spirit is something to change in our community. It doesn't matter how big or small. So don't complain. Go make it happen.
Best leaders are leaders. Separate time, out to 20 minutes a day. Read some leadership books. There are excellent leadership books are available. Hearing sermons will not help that much. Reading a book will develop you and you remember it and become a reader of leadership books. So that will change us and that will change you.
Can we give a huge round of applause for our panelists today? Yeah, just want to say thank you to each and every one of you for coming out, answering these tough questions, for being bold, and just being present. You know, that's what matters the most. You know, just being an influence to many of us here. All of you individually has made an impact in my life, the way the person I am today. Just want to say thank you on behalf of the church. Yeah, so let's pray and we'll close the session. Jesus, we just thank you for another day given to our lives where we can just come together on a Saturday morning and just talk about leadership. So many questions have been answered, and I pray that we take everything that we learned today and actually apply it in our lives, coming forth the days coming, Lord God. If many of us are in leadership, Lord God, I pray that we use what we learned today and apply it, Lord Jesus, because we know that we can't depend on ourselves, but we need to depend on you, Jesus. Without you, we are nothing, Jesus. Thank you for the food that you provided. I pray for the people that made it, Lord God. Bless the hands that made it, Lord Jesus. And I pray for tonight's session, Lord God, that many people will get a chance to encounter you, Jesus, Lord God. Thank you for everything that you've done for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you.